All right, welcome and thanks for joining us. This is a special episode of the award-winning Sales Game Changers podcast in partnership with Federal News Network. My name is Fred Diamond. I'm the co-founder and president of the Institute for Excellence in Sales. Today's show brings together sales leaders from the industry's top suppliers of technology to the federal government. We'll talk about their strategies to impact their government customers' missions. I'm very excited. My co-host today is Jeffrey Walensky, Director of Federal Sales for WTOP News and Federal News Network. Our guests today are all leaders in federal sales. We have Christine Barger, General Manager for Microsoft, Allison Patrick, Senior Vice President of Sales for Maximus, Joe Markward, Area Vice President for Salesforce, and Tamara Greenspan, Vice President for Oracle. Jeffrey, why don't you get us started?
If you think about the Sales Game Changer podcast, when I talked to Fred, 75% of the folks who have been interviewed on it are selling to the federal government. When you look at the opportunity that companies like yours have, there's $92 billion that the government spends on IT products alone, a lot with companies like yourselves. So you think, okay, many of you are companies, publicly traded, large companies that want sales now. And oftentimes when people think of a sales show, they think about us focusing on what we do. But the reality is that the majority of these podcasts, people have talked about what the customers do. So I want to start talking about the customer, the federal government. We know a lot about it. There's RFPs and there's a lot of transparency. There's also a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of acquisition policy. There's a lot of different things you have to deal with. So I'll start with Christine. Coming from one of the largest, if not the largest publicly traded company that reports results on a quarterly basis, when you talk about your sales team having to meet numbers but deal with the government process, what is it like in setting up your team to deal with the uniqueness of the federal government?
Yeah, it's a great question. We quite frankly, we do struggle with that internally because we are cyclically based and fiscal year based with regards to results as we report to the street. So I think it's really important to make sure that my sellers always stay focused on the customer and keeping the customer at the center from a mission perspective. So the way that we seem to coach our people is to make sure that they stay focused on the mission and help align to customer priorities. And whether that falls inside or outside the fiscal year, the chips may fall, but we always make sure that we keep the customer at the center. With regards to investments and other things that come in and out of my business from a corporate perspective, it is challenging to make sure that corporate understands the federal priorities and how that business runs and how it is remarkably different to the commercial business. And that's an ever-changing educational process, at least for me in my business. I don't know if my colleagues feel the same way.
Tamara or Joe, on that, when you think about, in many instances, the other part of your company, the commercial side, you might offer incentives or things that make a customer buy now versus just buy at some point. I don't know that that is something that matches with the government sales process. How do you guys deal with trying to move that sales process along at your speed rather than at the speed of government, if you will?
Well, I really don't think we can move it along at our speed. I mean, I think the point is made that we try to focus on the needs and the mission of the customer. I agree with that 100%. But it's really about working with the customer, understanding their requirements, and trying to get to the point where you get an agreement that your product or service is the right product and service, and just keep enough pipeline there that you can manage revenue quarter to quarter, because it is very, it's a challenge to try to use incentives and things like that to move along that process. So most of us have learned that you just have to have a pretty robust pipeline to manage your quarterly and annual revenue.
And I would add that we normally hire folks that have been a career in the federal government, both inside and out, and they're familiar with the process. So they need to accurately, plan their schedule, especially with communications to their management. And so we can accurately communicate back to the mothership because that is important. The sales cycle's long, we all know it, and we shouldn't be short-circuiting that by saying something's going to happen when it's not, because back to Christine's original point, it is about the customer, delivering what the customer needs, and establishing that long-term relationship with the customer to meet the mission.
If I could just add, I think Maximus is a little different on this panel among everyone else because we are a services provider, not a product-based company. And that while we're quarterly oriented as well in terms of posting results and publicly traded, your question, just kind of going full circle, was how do we organize a sales team? And I would say services, we really are in it for the long haul. We partner and marry up, our sales team to the agencies, and have sales representatives who have a real deep understanding of the agency's mission, their goals, their priorities. And I think that's the only way really in the services business to be different and successful, because our folks are almost an extension of our customers. So.
You've all had great success, decades of success in some cases, serving this federal marketplace. You've obviously seen changes that have happened over time. What are some of the major changes that you've seen since you've started in sales over the years to today that have impacted your sales efforts and your team's sales efforts? Joe, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think social media has really changed things, and I think it's changed it for the better in a lot of ways. Our customers have vast networks now that they can reach out to get information on products, information on pricing. When I started in this business many years ago, the consumers weren't as educated as they are now. So they can reach out, they can use their contacts, they can share information across agencies, which 10, 15, 20 years ago, that just wasn't there. And I think it's really good for the federal consumer because they're much more educated, and as long as we focus on their requirements, I think they can make better decisions.
Yeah. How about you?
So, it flip-flops back and forth over the years. I've been at Oracle almost 30 years now, and it's changed. The industry's changed, and we've transformed ourselves. And we go from best of breed to integrated, to best of breed to integrated, and that's what the government is looking for. And now with cloud, I think it's interesting because we're going back into more of an integrated solution, but we're also exposing the government to more commercial-like practices. With cloud, for the first time, it really is going to allow the uptake of that process because functionality is released on a quarterly basis in most instances for most of our product companies, and they're actually going to be able to be more innovative and actually deliver capability to their the services.
Very good, Christine.
I think I'm most excited about the increasing amount of transparency that's coming out of the government. And what I mean by that specifically is the principles around the PMA and the ability to go ahead and actually consume that information and make it relevant for our sellers to go ahead and provide value back to the government. So it's been amazing for us to go ahead and kind of retool our sellers to think in a different way outside of cloud, outside of product, outside of what we're going to deliver to them, but really articulating and translating how our products provide value to them in those three specific areas that they're looking to transform the government. So it does a great job of making sure that we get grounded in the customer's mission and that we're aligning our resources to go ahead and attack that to help them be successful. And then taking that a step further to actually, as a business partner to the government, go on to websites like performance.gov and check in with the results of what they're able to accomplish based on the specific priorities that they set forth. So I'm really excited about that, and it's been transformational, at least in my organization, to make sure that we are really checking down on the mission every single day with the customers.
I want to follow up on that, and I'll ask this question for you, Allison. So what are some things that you're actively doing that you're telling your sales team to do to stay in line with the customer's mission, to understand that, and to ensure that you truly are a great partner?
Sure, absolutely. So I think the most monumental change that we've seen in the federal market has occurred over the last decade, and that's a decline in budgets year over year. And that has certainly forced our sales team to be partnering with their customers in the agencies. The civil servants are doing a magnificent job of doing more with less. And that is across the board in the federal government. And it's remarkable to see, aging technology being shelved and modernization occurring across the board, the use of digital innovation. And the sales team is just armed with solutions, and they're daily working with their customers on brainstorming how can, in the long term, the customer be modernizing, taking huge systems and scaling in a different way, and what are the roadmaps to get from here to there. So I think the partnership model works best, certainly in solutions and service delivery, and that works well for us anyway.
I want to follow up with one last point on this topic before I hand it over to Jeffrey, to Joe. Again, Tamara's with Oracle, Christine's with Microsoft, and Allison's with Maximus. Salesforce is the new kid on the block, essentially. Of course, the company's hugely successful. You've made a lot of great inroads. What were some of the things that you're doing now to quickly get in partnership with your government customer?
Well, I think it's all about really, I have a little mantra on my team, is we need to know the customer better than they know themselves. I mean, we really need to understand the customer's business. It's not about our technology, it's about the requirements and the business needs of the customer. So I really encourage my teams to be students of their customers. And if you know your customer, if you know their business, if you know what their business problems are, it's a lot easier to communicate with them and to get to a win for the customer.
When you think about the customer, oftentimes people that aren't in this industry say the federal government. And it's all one big thing for them. Maybe the common taxpayer somewhere in America thinks that. But what we know is that really there's thousands of different organizations inside the federal government. There's cabinet level agencies. There are all kinds of different aspects of this. I mean, the Marines themselves have 6,000 different titles that people go under. This isn't like maybe some of your colleagues that might manage the healthcare vertical or the oil and gas industry or the finance vertical. When you think about the business that you run, are you more focused on going deeper inside of one specific agency that you have a track record with? Or are you more interested in saying, how can we add logos or flags to our list of clients? Joe, you want to start?
Yeah, this is when I hear that question, I think it's really important for everyone to understand that the federal marketplace is not a vertical marketplace. It is many verticals. There is, like for example, I manage the healthcare portion of the FedCiv portfolio. We've got someone that manages the financial services piece of it. We have another group managing the independents. We have another group, the law enforcement, because it is made up of verticals inside of verticals. And I think I'm probably safe to say that most of the large organizations that's how they're organized.
So when you look at Maximus, for example, Allison, BGov would report that you do a ton of business with Health and Human Services. Are you looking in the sense of Health and Human Services, if it was by itself, would be probably a Fortune 10 company? Would you focus your team on, hey, let's grow our business there, or let's take what we've done there and show that to other government agencies? And when you use that strategy, are the government agencies able to see, hey, proof of performance in this one place equals something that we can expect in this other place?
Sure, absolutely. So our capabilities and our quals do translate across the federal government. We do a lot of work with Health and Human Services, but we also are very strong at the IRS, for instance, and tax modernization, in addition to law enforcement agencies, Department of Homeland Security. So that being said, we also have teams of experts who understand that what one program may be at the Health and Human Services does not exactly drop into DHS by any means. I mean, every solution has to be tailored to the government's needs and be a very specific offering, which is why I think federal sales is unique and is very complex. And requires, teams of subject matter experts that understand the government's mission.
Very good. With all the challenges that have happened in this marketplace over the past number of years, there's been continuing resolutions, shutdowns, budget delays. What keeps you excited about this particular marketplace? What are some of the developments that have inspired you? Tamara, how about you?
Well, my team and myself, we focus on the Department of Defense. So we're basically patriots, and we're committed to the Department of Defense. Many of the folks on my team are former military or civil servants, and we're dedicated to the mission. I think you need to be mission focused to have the knowledge. Back to the comments of my colleagues, is you have to have the depth of the knowledge to provide solutions to the government, and you actually have to understand all the processes. So it's very important that you're dedicated and entrenched in that environment. And that's what makes us all successful, is because we are dedicated to the mission and wanting to actually help. And we're actually all helping ourselves because we're all part of this country. So the people are more mission focused in our space.
I think I'm most excited about the uptake in interest in security and the discussions around that. And to watch the landscape change across the government about how they look at security, how they define it, how they're going to embrace it in order to protect this country. It's been pretty much the building block of all of our solutions at Microsoft. And the willingness to go ahead and engage in those types of deep, meaningful discussions around security has been really enlightening for me, and provided an entree for us to talk very deeply and meaningfully about their business and how to propel that forward. So.
Very good. Well, when we come back from the break, we'll ask some specific questions about what your team can do and what your marketing team can do to ensure your company's success in selling to the federal government marketplace. This is the Sales Game Changers podcast special episode in partnership with Federal News Network.